Hello, and welcome to Feminine Emergence. I'm your host, Stephanie Briggs, and I'm thrilled to be speaking today with the lovely Wendy De Rosa. Welcome, Wendy. I'm so happy that you're here today as part of this event.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. It's great to be here.
Yeah. Okay, so Wendy, I'm going to begin by reading your bio just to introduce you to anyone here who isn't already familiar with you and your work. So Wendy De Rosa is an international intuitive energy healer, teacher, and author. For the past 2 decades, she has offered private sessions, education, and training programs for spiritual and personal growth for anyone wanting to develop their intuition, clear their blocks, and experience personal transformation. She is the founder of the School of Intuitive Studies and the Intuitive Healer Training Program. Wendy is a faculty member of the Shift Network and has been a featured presenter with Mind Valley's channel Solvana. Wendy has appeared on CBS News, Better Connecticut 4 times, and her book, Energy Healing Through the Chakras, A Guide to Self-Healing, is an Amazon bestseller. Wendy is also a contributing author to the best-selling book, Bouncing Back, Thriving in Changing Times, with Wayne Dyer, Brian Tracy, John Asseroff, and other leaders in personal growth. Out now is Wendy's 3rd book, Expanding Your Heart, Awakening Through 4 Stages of a Spiritual Opening. And for more information, you can visit her website, schoolofintuitivestudies.com. So Wendy, today you're going to be speaking to us about the empath experience and how to reclaim your center and stop absorbing the world around you if you're an empath. And I really can't wait to hear what you have to share about this topic, as I know it's so relevant to a lot of people watching today.
Absolutely.
So to get started, you've been a teacher and an intuitive healer for a long time now. And I'm curious, how did you learn that you were intuitive, and how did you first step into this work?
Yeah. So I grew up in a family of 8 kids as the oldest girl, and at a very young age, I was dealing with a lot of big energy, a big Italian Catholic family, lots of yelling and screaming, and no boundaries, and food and all of that. But seriously, growing up in that environment as a sensitive child, I didn't have the structure at the time or the awareness of how sensitive or intuitive I was at the time. And I started to absorb a lot of the energy that was going on around me. Now, what I know now that I didn't know back then is that I had what I call 4 aspects of intuition. I had all 4 of them. I could see intuitively, I could hear clairaudiently, I could feel empathically or clairsentiently, and I could also know. I could have a deep sense of knowing, which is great as an intuitive healer. But as a child, all it meant was absolute overabsorption and overwhelm. And so I grew up in the household. I took on and absorbed everything everywhere. I actually physically blew up. I gained a lot of weight by the time I was 9. And then as I'm progressing through my teenage years, I'm starting to develop anxiety and panic attacks, to the point where I went to work at 12 years old, and all I ever knew for myself was how to take care of people. So I started babysitting at 12 years old. I had 21 families that I nannied for by the time I was 14 years old. And I was like subcontracting jobs out to my younger sister at the time, who had just turned 12. So I was known as the responsible one, the mature, 14-year-old, and I was really great with kids. And so, but I didn't have a childhood, and I didn't have a sense of myself, and I didn't get to develop, playfulness for me. It was all through helping others nurture their playfulness and connection, and joy in life. And so I was getting more and more overwhelmed. And at the same time, really not necessarily finding space for myself, to a point where when I got to college, I had a full-blown nervous breakdown in my 3rd semester of school. I was also very self-pressured. I was really good at school, and I at least I put a lot of pressure on myself. I'll say it that way. Um, and that nervous breakdown was a big turning point for me, as sometimes these sort of crises can be. And from that point onward, I had this, I was having this anxiety coupled with this inner feeling of, I need to move, I need to get out of here. I need to get anywhere but here. And at the time, I felt really called to Colorado. I was 19 years old, and I didn't know why. I'd never been there. I didn't know anything about it really, except maybe what I saw in magazines, because the social media didn't exist back then. But we were, I was moved. So anyway, I moved to Colorado, and out of making a really long story short, I got into a car accident. I had to go through some repair, rehabilitation from it, chiropractic, some healing, therapeutic massage, and the massage therapist in the office I was going to had said to me one day, she said, we should have crossed a boundary to say this, because back then you don't talk about, like, intuition was under the table still. It just was like, not 20 something years ago. She said, I really feel like you have this gift and this ability, and it's underdeveloped. It's not tapped. And my mom is a spiritual teacher. I think she can help you. She's an energy healing teacher. So I met her mom, and her mom sort of confirmed the similar. And anyway, a couple months later, I started a class with her and studied with her for 2 years to really understand what this was that I had going on in my system. And I started, out of feeling energetically overwhelmed, I started moving into doing healing work for people and intuitive work. And I just kept getting referred to left and right. And by the time I was 30, I had over 500 clients from word of mouth. Again, social media didn't exist then. So it was all just referrals. And then I started teaching the work. And so fast forward, here's where I am. Here's where we are.
Wow. That's like such an incredible journey, like becoming empowered and finding the work that you're meant to do. And it sounds like you've helped so many people already. Like, that must be really meaningful. How you were able to transform your challenges into something great. And so, could you just share a little bit for us about what an empath is and why people are experiencing oversensitivity?
Yes. So a couple things. I mentioned just a bit ago about that there are 4 aspects of our intuition. And there's the seeing, the hearing, the feeling, and the knowing. Empath has to do with the feeling sense in the body. It has to do specifically with what's going on in the 2nd and 3rd chakras of the body. Those are the empathic power centers. They are our sensitive power centers that feel everything that's subsurface. So it might, and sometimes it's not subsurface. Sometimes it's really on the table, or people are, emoting and saying it, and it comes in. We might think it comes in through the heart or somewhere else, and some people might feel it that way. But overly empathic is the experience of absorbing energy into the lower half of the body. And why I believe people are having a very difficult time with this right now is for several reasons. One is that we are in a very traumatized world right now. And a lot of that trauma is coming from experiences that have been unhealed, wounds that have been unhealed in the body, and people acting out from that place. People not knowing how to have a sense of self, or how to have their emotions, or just be in authenticity with who they are, how they feel. And instead, they're in pain on some level, and they're acting out of pain. Something hurt their heart. So they're acting out of heartache. They're acting out of some disconnection from their heart. They're also operating out of disconnection. When we disconnect from our heart, we disconnect from spirit, because that's where grace comes in through the body. When we're engaging in humanity, we engage through the heart center. Ideally, we engage in lots of ways, but when we're staying in right alignment with ourselves. So we're in this wounded profile, in the world right now, where there's a lot going on the collective level, which is on any time we experience something on a collective level, it is going to trigger our personal wounds. Collective wounds trigger personal wounds. And so for empathic people, I believe two things. One is I think empathic people are getting triggered because there is an untapped gift, because they need to get triggered in order to identify the fact that they might actually have one, two, three, or all four aspects of this intuitive ability in their body. And I believe that the empath has a very specific role in moving consciousness forward on this planet. And I believe that part of what the empath is here to do is to actually, through their own actions, through their own embodiment of self, is to teach people how to have their emotions, how to have boundaries, how to have empathy, and how to facilitate spirit into the world, how to basically be a mystic in the world. And it's not woo-woo. It's not out there. It's part of our natural alignment and connection in the body. But what what we all have experienced as empaths is the opposite. You know, it's that I can't even get there because I'm managing all of this energetic overwhelm that's coming in all these different directions. But here's what's going on in the energy system. Is that okay if I dive in?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I'm on a roll. So in the energetic body, there's something that happens that's very specific for the empath and also the intuitive system. And it's this. If I've been raised in an environment where on a deep soul spiritual level, my sense of belonging in this body and feeling safe and trusting myself, this earth, the people around me, and that I can just unfurl and relax and be who I am. If that's compromised on some level because I was brought into a tribe or a family structure that didn't know that was okay for them, you know, maybe there's a lot of anger, there's a lot of yelling and screaming, that wasn't my case. There's a lot of maybe there's alcoholism, maybe there's some other form of emotional projection going on. Then in the energetic system, my root chakra at the tailbone is going to contract. And that's the power center for safety and trust in the body. And safety and trust are powers. And if I don't have a handle on that power, because instead I feel tremendous fear about my belonging and my integration into this world, then what ends up happening is the root chakra stays in contraction and my spirit will lift up higher in the body. Now, if my spirit starts to lift up higher in the body, the second chakra area of the body will start to compensate. And it compensates by either blowing really open or shutting down. And one of the two can happen. And if I blow open or I shut down, my soul has to move out of my body a little bit in order to deal with that. And when I move out of my emotional center in the second chakra area of the body, then what happens for the empath and the intuitive, very sensitive child is that the sensitive child starts to become hypervigilant. And that hypervigilance says it's not okay for me to have my feelings. I have to move myself aside and make other people's emotions a priority so that I know how to navigate how to be in myself. So now I'm developing this somewhat codependent relationship with energy and with emotions, and they're not my emotions. It's if I move out of the way, other people's energies start to come into this mothering center in the second chakra, because the second chakra is a mothering center. It's an emotional center. We're able to feel the spectrum of emotions in the second chakra. And so now I can't be in my emotions. It's not okay for me to have my emotions. It's not okay for me to come through fear or come through grief or come through, anger. I have to shut myself down and make other people's energy a priority. And that starts to set us up for this empathic experience where the patterning in my body is saying normal to me is to have this pathway open for me to be able to absorb, even if from here up, heart chakra upward, I don't want to. The lower chakras are doing something different. The third chakra, because empathic intuition relates to these lower chakras, the third chakra does this really incredible compensation for no grounding, basically. The root chakra contracts. There's not enough grounding in my legs and feet and lower body because an unfurled root chakra supplies prana and love and life force to those lower extremities. So now I don't have a grounding cord moving down. Instead, my solar plexus, or my third chakra, its innate job is that it's to help me navigate in my surroundings, so I know how to orient myself in my environment. I know how to have my confidence or my sense of self based on what I'm seeing around me in my environment. Well, if there's no grounding cord connection, the root chakra is contracted, the second chakra is overly absorbing, the third chakra is going to look for attachments. It's going to look for a way to ground. And so it's going to cord into all these different people and all these different situations around me so that I can feel a sense of self. And this is what's happening in the empathic profile for the lower chakras of the body. My sense of self is dependent on how these other people think and feel and what they do. And, if they go away, something gets wiped out, and it could be a job. It could be a house. If that stuff gets wiped away, who am I? Who am I? So what this is coming back to is this. A lot of what I'm talking about is engagement through the front side of the body. We engage in the world through the front of our chakra system, but we have a whole backside to our energy system that connects to our self, our higher self, and grace. And it's part of our work as intuitives and empathic intuitives to start to understand, first of all, your chakra system. I don't really understand how any empath is going to maintain center and boundaries without understanding the chakras. They're very, very important. They're a big aspect of our power in ourselves. So it's getting to know your chakras. What are they? What do they do? What's going on in yours? That's a big aspect. Secondly, is that we learn to pull back or lean back from being so front body in our world to actually starting to engage the backside and to self and start to center our energy. So some of those tools are that we ground ourselves through our grounding cord to the center of the earth. And then we also lean back into a divine flow of grace. And we start to get connected and sourced through our back body and letting that energy come in to the chakras, through the vertical alignment, through grace flowing down. And that as we're sourcing ourselves there, we start to it doesn't, it may not be instantaneous. It may put us on a path of, wait, who am I really? I really have to spend more time back here, meditating, connecting to myself, long walks by myself with spirit, it's connection to the nature. Or I need to, do some self-care that's going to help me spend more time cultivating my sense of self and my power. And I need to start pulling back how I'm courting and relating to the world, and start investing more sense in my grounding and my sense, and, in my sense of self. And then just the last piece to say about this too is that, in developing intuition and staying healthy as an empath in the world it's an ongoing process. It's not like, here, put some light around you, put a bubble of light around you and, shield yourself and that you'll feel better as an empath. Mm-mm. It's it becomes a journey. And the journey is, how do I start to clear out the wounds and the blocks that I'm holding in my lower chakras so I can sit more powerfully in myself, so I can radiate. We don't absorb energy externally when we're in our central channel, when we're grounded in our body, when we understand the power of the lower chakras and we're radiating out. We hold a different relationship with the world around us. It doesn't make that stuff go away, but we don't become overly empathic. So, yeah, one more thing. Sorry, I'm on this one. Empathic doesn't mean taking on the energy of others. Overly empathic means taking on the energy of others. Empathic means I'm in my center. I'm grounded in my sense of self. I'm totally okay with feeling my feelings. Therefore, I'm okay with you having your feelings. It's not for me to take that away from you. It's not for me to psychically absorb that into my system. Nope. No, I know what my anger feels like. I'm okay having it. Therefore, I'm okay if you have yours. That starts to set emotional and energetic boundaries in the body. So the health of the empath and why we're triggered here is so that we can start to identify the power in the lower chakras. Power in the root is safety and trust and belonging and being here and understanding you here on this earth. Power in the second chakra is your creativity, your sensitivity, your intuitive, empathic nature, feeling things, trusting yourself, being in co-creation with the divine, going with the flow. Power in the third chakra is confidence and sense of self and being able to manifest true self into the world, not manifest wounded ego into the world, but have a healthy ego. Healthy ego is I'm manifesting my true self into the world. Healthy ego, we need that part of us. So that's my long answer to why I believe empaths are being triggered now and what we're asked to step into.
Wow, thank you so much. That was so rich with information and just like such a helpful explanation of some of the chakras and what they're about and how they work and how they're supposed to work. And I'm really struck by what you shared about how it's not about really like creating, as you said, this bubble of like, I'm gonna like kind of separate myself because if I'm in connection with the world and people around me, I'm not safe or I'm going to be overwhelmed. And how actually like the way we're meant to be is kind of what I'm hearing you say is in part like realizing that we're held by the earth, our connection to the earth below us, and we're kind of backed up by spirit. And yeah. I know for me personally that's been part of my journey, and I understand from my experience so much of what you shared about just kind of that codependence and taking care of people, and like it's just so exhausting. And I think you're absolutely right that we can't continue that way. Like so much more of us is needed, like of our individual selves, and like we're all here with something to offer. And if I'm always taking care of other people, or I'm feeling like under assault by their presence, then I can't show up with what I'm here to do.
As an empath who has been overly absorbent, part of the true self has hidden itself somewhere. It's preserving itself somewhere in the energy system, and it's not living in full potential. And so part of that empathic work is to start to heal the defenses and the blocks and the others' energies and the karma that's in there, and all the things that have been in the system, to start to find that self that's hiding and start to bring him or her out more in the body. Because as we radiate out, we're not victim to all this energy around us. And I don't mean to imply that like having a bubble of light around us isn't correct or isn't a useful tool. It is, but it's not at the expense of the inner work. We can put bubbles of light around us left and right if we're not doing the inner clearing work and the inner process and the inner radiance, that bubble of light is just going to be a Band-Aid. We need to have that. We need to do the inner expansion, the central channel and the radiance and the emerging of self. I love that you're merging of women and the feminine. because that's a big part of this. The feminine is the emotional aspect of self. The feminine is the intuitive part of ourselves. The feminine in the body has gotten beaten up by the masculine in us. My own masculine, as an example, is critical, is trying to suppress, is scared of the feminine side, of the intuitive side of me. And that's embodied. I'm not saying that's happening in me, but first person example. If I have an inner critic that's beating up my intuitive side, I have internalized an external voice about that. I have internalized my family. I've internalized society. I've internalized past lifetimes. It just wasn't okay for the feminine to be emerged in self. And what we are learning, and consciousness evolution is happening in this way. We are shifting that paradigm. Not just women, physical women emerging their power, but the essence of the feminine in the body as our vulnerable and our real feminine, saying, I'm not going to pretend that didn't hurt my feelings, because it did. But let's talk about it. That's feminine. Let's just clear the air about that. And it's not all this other oh, I'm sorry, I don't want to make you feel bad. It's like, no, this hurt me. And let me say what that was about for me. And I'm not going to make you wrong because you taught me something about myself in that, but it hurt. It had impact on me. Those are aspects of the feminine in terms of embodying herself and her power and representing representing herself or making space for herself.
Yeah, absolutely. And, what I'm hearing is how important the inner work is, and how, we kind of have to be able to feel safe within ourselves so that we can be safe out in the world. And as well as how taking the time and the resources to do this inner work is also in service of others, because of how we're able to show up differently and set an example and inspire others and have these, kind of real conversations that I think we need more reality in our world right now. So I'm curious, is everybody empathic, or does this only apply to certain people?
Well, some people come into this world with an extra amount of prana. I would say, how do I say it? Stronger power centers than others. And some people come into this world with strong power centers throughout, and sometimes the conditioning just starts to block up, various areas of the body. Not everybody is empathic. Some people live higher up in their body and have a very difficult time connecting to empathy, to being connected in their body. And do they come into this world like that? Possibly. And also there can be childhood experiences such as trauma, or, ways of conditioning throughout life that really made it very hard for an individual to feel safe in their body. And so they might leave their body, go higher up in their body, maybe live more in their head, disconnected from the lower chakras, and even disconnected from the heart, that would have them, do something, act out, or be in the world in ways that might have, I'll say, heartless or unempathic, non-empathic impact on other people. There's a lot of that going on, actually. So no, not everybody is empathic. Do people have the capability of, reconnecting to their lower chakras? Absolutely. And is it easy? Not necessarily. I mean, it does require us to coming into the body sometimes can be a very emotional experience. And we need to know it's okay to feel the feelings, and the feelings are part of the process too. And there's nothing wrong with that. We have such conditioning around emotions. Don't cry, don't feel this. There's this added layer of shame around feeling a feeling. And that layer of shame sometimes blocks the actual access to the feeling. So if we can reparent that part of us and say, it absolutely is okay for me to have my anger right now. I'm entitled to my own anger right now, and have it. We sometimes can feel two things at the same time. One is relief that I'm actually letting myself have this feeling. The other is the feeling itself. If they coexist at the same time, then you're there. you're in it. You did it. That's a good thing. So yeah, I mean, I think that empathic people, or people can connect to their empathic side of them. And yes, so it's absolutely possible to connect. Not everybody's in it all the time. Some people are more gifted in the upper half of their body as well. That's okay too.
So it's really like a spectrum, and we all have our own individual sort of calibration.
Some people come into this world with heightened intuition in certain areas of the body, but the only way it would perhaps be perceived as a problem for that person is if they are constantly having experiences in life that say, like, well, the rug keeps getting pulled out from under me, or I keep getting attracted to people who betray me, or I keep, I can't pay my bills, or I can't keep a job, or, when those worldly things start to become an issue, then it's like, okay, let's start looking at this gift you have up here. Let's start working on what's going on lower in the body. At that point, prana can start to open up, wounds can be cleared, and that all that gifted energy in the upper body can start to embody more.
So what would be someone's path or direction in learning how to develop their intuitive gifts, whatever they may be?
Yeah, so definitely I mentioned the chakra system and really understanding what's the energetic anatomy specifically. I have my website, School of Intuitive Studies, is a place you can go if you want to learn more about your energetic system, your development of intuition, energy anatomy, and also just spiritual growth. I also run an intuitive healer training program. And so that might be an avenue you want to go in. If you feel like you have a lot of experience in personal process, you've been on the path for a while, and you really want to start stepping into developing more of your healer gifts and abilities, whether or not you want to be a healer in the world. People don't really join the program necessarily because they want to be a healer. Sometimes it's because they feel that they want to do the deep inner work. That would be a great step and process. And in general, I would say, you can go to my website and view what I have to offer, and energy clearing, like self energy healing, deep internal personal process, emotionally processing. Those are going to be very big ongoing tools for the empath, is that we do know how to do that. We do know how to work through the stuff, and not just mentally, like through the story of it, but really getting into the body and start clearing the body, and moving, clearing energy. And that in itself it's almost like the phrase is too small for the experience, because that itself is a whole journey in itself. So in any way that you want to start learning about energy clearing and healing, I would say that's your next step from here. And if you do want to visit my website and check out my programs and offerings there, schoolofintuitivestudies.com, that would be also a great place to go.
Great. Thank you so much. So you're actually offering our audience a free gift today that can actually be like a helpful way to get started on this. Could you just tell us a little bit about what that is?
Yes. So the program that I have to offer today is on developing your intuition, and it's a free program for you, for listening here, to learn a little bit about the distinction between the soul's voice and the ego voice, and understanding that it's also just explaining a little bit more about the difference between the soul, the wounded ego, and the healthy ego, and how much noise we actually carry in our energy system as energetic blockage, and how to actually work through clearing that and grounding yourself so that more of your soul's experience will come through, more of your soul's presence will actually come through. So yes, I definitely recommend the program, and I hope you take advantage of that. And there'll be a link here where you can register for the program.
Yeah, thank you so much, Wendy. It's so generous of you to offer this valuable resource with our audience. And as Wendy mentioned, you can just look down below for the link to get your copy of that. And again, if, as Wendy mentioned, if you want to go deeper into this, she has so many resources available on her website, School of Intuitive Studies, the training program. I think she's really a helpful support in this. And I know personally it's really important to have support on this journey because it is ongoing, and some, there are moments that are challenging, and it's good to have like a buddy or somebody who can kind of help you keep going, and someone who's kind of been down this path a little bit further than you, and can really help you in those challenging moments. Mm-hmm. So Wendy, is there anything else that you'd like to share before we finish up today?
The only thing I thought of in when you were speaking is that if you haven't yet been to my YouTube channel, there's a lot of information and videos, and also on my blog on my website, there's a ton of information. You might be interested in checking out some of those videos because they have been very, very helpful for people. So definitely visit the videos and the blog on my website, and just that I just like to leave you with the awareness that there is, again, I said this, but again, there is a part of you that does need to emerge. And as hard and as triggering as it can be to feel like you're bombarded by the world and taking on so much, it's absolutely, you're getting triggered on purpose. It's like the universe is knocking and saying, learn about this aspect of yourself, find power in yourself. Start to uncover more of you, the true you, so you can bring more of that part of you out. And so that is a process in itself. It's not always overnight, but just know that there is that deeper part of yourself that wants to come through. And that is perhaps an underlying reason why you're getting triggered as an empath. So I hope you do take this journey in more self-discovery. And I look forward to connecting with you. As if you check out my website and we find each other there, I look forward to working with you there. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you, Wendy. And I know that a lot of people are going to be interested in knowing more about what you do. And I just want to say thank you again for being here today and sharing your depth of wisdom and expertise, and something about your personal story. I think it's really helpful and inspiring. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Stephanie. I'm so glad you're doing this for people. This is wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, and I also want to thank everybody who's out there watching and listening, and just want to offer you the best on your journey. So thanks a lot.